Yeah, I have no idea what I'm in for here, so I'm just going along for the ride.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride the last few years. The Shogun story is kind of an interesting one.
Eric Schmidt preempted everything because he was very close to us on the campaign. And so he basically said to us, I'm going to fund your company.
There were no more toy stores. Toys R Us went bankrupt. There was no place for you to bring your family and hang out on a ritualistic basis. It was like, yeah, well, this is ours for the taking. Like, no one's going to be dumb enough to do this.
We had no company, and he said, Harper, you and Dylan are going to start a company together. You're going to be CEO, Dylan's going to be CTO, and you're just going to do it. That was the confidence that I needed. Then we turned it on and did the thing, and that was what created Modest.
We had bootstrapped the company to 1.2 million ARR. Then we raised the seed round, and the seed round was 2.1 million. We had a real business, and it was growing really well and doing great. But
I mean, camp should have died 18 months in. We opened a store on Fifth Avenue. We went from like zero revenue, like the company didn't exist, to like $1 million within 60 days. $20 transactions, like real traction. Line around the block. So much so that it was easy, relatively, to raise a Series A. Rapidly scaled to 5 locations by the end of 2019. So we went from 1 store to 5 stores in the 60 days preceding COVID.
You know, we're very much in Silicon Valley. I had worked for Y Combinator as a software engineer, and I kind of got to see from the inside how startups are made and, you know, how the game is played. Decided, okay, we're going to do YC. So, we applied to YC, we got into YC, and then we weren't even sure if we were definitely going to raise or not. And it was only a couple of weeks before demo day, we said, okay, let's just raise a couple million. You know, it'll give ourselves some optionality. My wife was pregnant, and I had this fear, oh shit, I'm still going to be on the phone to investors and she'll be, having our baby in a couple of months. But we raised $2 million in 10 days. It was a really quick process, and it was a big relief for me to be able to do that.
And that was, we had all sorts of ideas, but we really all loved what we learned around e-commerce on the Obama campaign. And just like, we were like, wait a minute, I think we can do e-commerce a little bit differently than we did before. There's a lot of companies now that do similar stuff fast, and a few others that do like mobile checkout really quick. That was basically what Modest was. We were, I think, a little too early.
Literally, our entire value proposition was kids are going to jump on things, lick things. Like, I'll never forget, like, going into COVID, one of our homepage image was a product called Lick-a-Bubble, where you could eat bubbles. But in the store, we demoed this product, right? So there was a picture of a camp counselor blowing a bubble into a kid's face that they would then eat the bubble. It's like the exact wrong thing.
When we applied to YC, our revenue was about $40,000 a month. By the time we actually had the interview, it was $50,000 a month. By the time demo day came around, it was $100,000 a month. And so when I say we bootstrapped to 1.2 million, we hadn't spent any of YC's money to get to that 1.2 million. It was all of this out of the revenues of the company. At least for the first few years, we always had this attitude of, okay, raise at a valuation that's very reasonable, where you could then raise more money if you needed to. Like, raise a valuation that you've already earned. But so we raised the Series A, which was 10 million, 50 million valuation, and at the time we raised that round, 5 million ARR growing 3x year over year. So I think we'd earned the valuation. You know, you've got a fast-growing business that's only spent a few $100,000 to get to that revenue level, and it's being valued at 10x revenue with a 90% margin.
We were trying to close our Series B the week COVID hit. We closed on half of it. We're like, okay, camp is an e-commerce, it's like, it's a website company. It's a digital company now. We wound up doing well. We did a giant partnership with Walmart. We were able to, I think our first year in business, the year before COVID, we did like $6 million in revenue. The second year we did like 20 something. Also growing every year, even though our stores were closed. And then it was like clear we needed to get the stores reopened. So I wanted to, raise capital to get back into that mode. And that's when I, raised money from folks that I didn't wind up getting along with.
That was around August to September 2019 is when we raised that money. COVID obviously happened about 6 months later, which massively accelerated e-commerce. And we had this huge tailwind from COVID. Our install rate went up 50% overnight. And the interest rates were obviously lowered, and people had a lot of money for buying software. And so we were able to scale both businesses really well. The page builder business essentially doubled in 12 months. The front end business went from 50K or whatever of ARR to 300K of ARR. We signed a bunch more contracts along the way. We had early customers who were paying us for this unlaunched thing. And then what happened is we were approached by Accel and they preempted us on a Series B. We weren't trying to raise money at all. Within 6 days of starting a conversation with them, we had a term sheet.
We should have picked a market segment and said, let's go after medium businesses or small businesses or whatever. We should have prioritized sales a little earlier. I think it was the famous, we're not quite ready. And my takeaway is yeah, but do it anyway. You're never ready. Every piece of software I've written, every piece of software we've launched, even if we've launched, with Galactic, the last company, we launched things early, way earlier. Even then, we were we still waited too long. I've just never felt that we have launched in a time that's uncomfortable.
I mean, the fact that we even existed still was a miracle. The company needed capital desperately. I will say that what I would have normally done in a venture raising process, I did not do in that process, because any normal venture investor at that point was just saying no. It was you don't have enough data, there aren't enough stores, there's not enough stuff going on here that I can have conviction. And so it wound up going in this world of family office type people. Did I feel perfectly comfortable with the people? No, not necessarily. And I definitely heard things about their reputation, but I ignored it because I was able to get a round done. And that felt important at that time.
This was September 2020. There was just cash raining down from the sky. In retrospect, I think we made some mistakes there. The worst leverage position you can be in is to only talk to one potential investor. We didn't find out how the market would have valued us because we only spoke to this one investor. The whole thing just happened so quickly. It was such low effort for us to do it. We didn't really have a plan for the money, which was, in retrospect, a really big problem.
Here's the thing. I can't even say I regret it at all. The market changed. They, I think, very rationally wanted to change the strategy at that point, but we were already in these big strategic partnerships with Disney and Universal, and so we kind of had to fulfill on those commitments. We burned through a fair amount of capital that year. It was clear in late 22 that the family offices just didn't want me to be CEO anymore because they thought that, I don't know, they didn't think that I was as malleable as they would have liked me to be, I think is probably the right way to describe it.
Threadless in 2007 or 8, this guy came in and was here's how you take Threadless to Japan. You have one chance because Japan has so many clothing brands that you bring it once, and if you fuck it up, no one will buy it again. You really have to be very strategic and careful about launching. I think right now that's kind of what's happening. Is if you buy your fancy domain, you do your fancy launch, and then everyone looks at your fancy domain, your fancy launch, and it doesn't hit, you don't get another chance.
And when you don't have a plan for the money and somebody comes in, you then have a bunch of people around the table who are trying to encourage you to spend it. And they're like, look, I've seen this work at other companies. This is the way to do it. We're going to help you hire a bunch of execs and do all this stuff, which we did, and it didn't work.
I have a very transparent style, both internally and externally. And I think that wasn't necessarily welcomed. This was most pointed during the SVB bank run, where we were at SVB. Our bank account was, inaccessible. And this was right in the moment where we really needed capital. And so I sent out an email blast to our customer base saying, we have no bank account. We don't know if we're going to exist on Monday. This was a Friday. And we're going to do 30% off on the website, and we're going to change our Shopify so that the money goes into a Chase account. $3.6 million in 24 hours. Every news outlet on the country, we were the poster child for this bank collapse thing. Man, they lost their shit on me. It was horrible.
Ultimately, we did go out for a Series C. That, again, was an incredibly quick round. We raised the Series C in around May 2021. It was $67.5 million. And it was a $575 million valuation, which was absolutely dumb in retrospect. Huge step up. And we had multiple offers, and it was very competitive, and it was stupid. And as soon as we'd raised that money, I remember our Series B investor at the time saying, right, guys, it's time to really go now. It's time to get moving here. 6 months after the Series C, we realized we had to cut. And we did a big layoff in January of 2022. Then we did another big layoff in September 2022. Then we did another layoff in like March 2023 and another layoff. And so I think the part of it that I really have to own personally is, I was the CEO when we were doing all this, and the strategy, we kept changing our mind about like, okay, are we going to focus on this business or this business? We basically had two different products that weren't complementary to each other. We tried all different things to make the two different businesses grow, but there was always this sort of split focus between the businesses, which was very, very difficult. Like every decision was, okay, do we allocate this person or this budget to this business or this business?
No one was stepping up to the plate to continue financing the business. To the point where I went to I was like, I need you to lead this round by the end of the week, or like this thing's done. And said, we're going to do it. It's going to be a pay to play, yada, yada, yada. The family offices had all these weird terms that I never had in venture deals before, like with blocking rights and all sorts of weird shit. They were going to block the recap unless I was taken out of the picture, basically. They were fine with me being there. They knew I needed to be there to keep Disney happy or whatever it might be, but they just didn't want me to be CEO anymore. They also wanted to completely wipe my founder shares. All things considered, I did what I had to do to keep the business alive. I don't, like I said, I don't regret taking their money, and I don't regret wiping myself to nothing, because every day there's, thousands of kids that go into those stores and have a great time, and I'm proud of the shit of that,
People are pushing their products out, getting early information. The best ones are iterating really fast. The worst ones are digging in. And I don't know which is right. You know what I mean? Like, this is another one of those examples of like, maybe something that's going to happen in a year, and like digging in is right. Maybe iterating to suddenly we all have fast horses is bad.
And we talked about all different ideas for how we were gonna get out of the situation, and ultimately we decided on a very aggressive pivot, which I regret. I think that was the wrong move in retrospect, and we ended up spending a lot of money to do that. I think those kind of pivots are actually, you can pull that off if you're a very small company with a small group of people and you don't already have this other business that's gnawing at you with tons of revenue and growing constantly. I mean, it was this weird thing. It was like, we had this business that was growing, and we're like, yeah, no, not that. We're going to focus on this thing here instead. The thing that we weren't focused on just kept on growing month after month after month. It was like 6 years of unabated exponential up to the right growth, which was just phenomenal.
Well, we just saw Arc, right? Arc just did this big release about how the Arc browser, they're like, it's too much of a power user thing. We're never going to make money with a power user. We raise too much money. We're going to have to do something else, which was 100% of the story of Galactic, right? We were like, what we did here is great. It's power users only. We're going to have to pivot. Pivoting sucks. Well, Galactic was a very cool piece of software that was a virtual camera. It would put a JavaScript overlay that you could run apps on your video. So you could do like anything with it. You could put graphs on there. All my pitches that we did for it, we raised I think $10.5 million in total. All of our slides were embedded in the video. It was very, very cool. It worked really well. But then what we found is it was only power users. And power users are fine, but you can't raise $10.5 million and build a business for just power users. You're looking for millions and millions of users. You're not looking for 1,000, 2,000, 5,000. And so we just looked and we just said, well, that sucks. Like, whoops. Like, I don't think this was a like, whoa, what happened? I think we made a thing. We assumed a few things about that thing, and we were not correct.
I don't really have any regrets in the camp journey in terms of like strategy and how it went. I wish it went more in my favor and my team's favor. Did I make mistakes? Fuck yeah, of course. You make mistakes every day. I made mistakes in hiring. I made mistakes in locations. I made all sorts of mistakes. Listen, I'm all for hiring people, and I'm definitely for hiring executives, but sometimes you get pushed to hire people with like this crazy pedigree, like a really amazing pedigree and resume that like, yeah, they're great and probably amazing in a corporate environment, but in this like, $30-50 million startup, like they don't know how to operate.
Shogun's still going, by the way, and we're in a very different position now. It's been a journey and a grind to get to that point. Founders, your business better than investors. If an investor's coming to you saying, I'm going to help you scale this business, and you're not completely convinced it's going to work the way that they say it's going to work, it's probably not going to work the way they say it's going to work. And I have this sort of fundamental belief, and it's maybe a bit of a hot take, but I think a whole bunch of companies that raised money and hired big teams and then also went on to grow their revenues They could have grown the revenue without raising money and hiring big teams. The market would have pulled it out of them anyway. They just made themselves really inefficient in many cases by hiring these massive teams. It's not the team and the money is not what begets the growth. It's the market positioning and the product and all the other factors going for the business, the timing, like all these things.
Galactic taught me something that I don't think is helpful to learn, which was I don't think venture-backed startups are skill-based. There are a lot of people that build really great software, that are really great products, that work for thousands of people, and they get nothing. And there are a lot of people who build really shitty software that works for, let's say, thousands of people as well, barely works, and they get a payday. But if you line it all up, like who wins typically? It's not, the quality product does not always dictate the win. In that regard, I don't think this is a skill-based program. And so like many non-skill-based programs, it's times at bat that matter, not what you do when you're at bat, because it's so fucking hard.
But like, I do feel a need to say something which is like such a weird fucking thing for me to say. And that is like, I think everyone did their job. Were there moments in time where like I was angry at people or people were angry at me? Yes. But like with some distance, like I think I can honestly say everyone did their job, right? Like I did my job as entrepreneur, which is will something into existence and make sure it doesn't die. Like that is my number one job. And I did that. I sacrificed everything that I had in the business to keep it alive willingly and would do it again tomorrow. And they had a job to do, which is, preserve their capital, grow their capital, etc. And they had a belief of the way they should go about doing that. And they were doing their job. A lot of times there's like, it's entrepreneurs versus VCs and all this stuff. And like, I don't blame them necessarily for anything. Like, not even VC, even the family office people who I, didn't get along with very well. Like, they're doing their job.
This is not necessarily straight skill based. That doesn't mean you can't have skill. That doesn't mean you can't just fuck off and raise a bunch of money and not do anything. You still have to do that because the eventuality is that you might actually have to run a business. But you really have to have a very clear understanding of, okay, this doesn't work. Because then you can iterate and move. Like, how do you know what to build? That's less important than how do you know when to stop. Because I think it's like, one thing is like, how do you know when to build? Well, if you've made a decision to be an entrepreneur, you have an idea of how to start. And so you just have to start.
Maybe I'm just a jaded founder, but like I'm now this advocate of like, stay small forever, don't give up control, never raise the price round, and I'm trying to push, I've invested in a bunch of companies in the last few years and I push them all to stay as small as possible. When you're not in this sort of tech VC bubble, it's obvious that's how you should run your business. Run it efficiently, spend as little as possible, make as much money as possible. But there's this false dichotomy that is presented by the venture capital industry, which is like, you either bootstrap and go slow, or you raise as much money as possible and you go fast. If you offer software self-serve, you can scale it incredibly efficiently without dealing with all of the bullshit that comes with having a massive go-to-market motion. It's quite seductive to raise more money. It feels good to raise more money. But once that money hits the bank and it sinks in that it's there, you start to realize, oh shit, now I've just like really made the goalposts way further out for myself. Maybe I don't have so much control and I've reduced my optionality meaningfully. I think you can grow incredibly quickly and stay small. You can be equally ambitious without raising tons of money. A therapist once said to me, my pain becomes my message. Like I've experienced a lot of pain, and now I'm like, giving out the message of how to avoid some of the pain.
Thanks for including me. I love it. I love everything you're doing.
Take care. Cool. See you. Bye.